Hey there! Today we are going to talk how to make your own tarot or oracle deck, or really any deck for that matter. So last month I recently made myself 3 new decks, I know, and sometimes that's just how creativity rolls and you gotta go with it. So I went ahead and I made a deck that I've been really needing and wanting in my practice. It's a mini word deck. And then I went ahead and finally curated and made myself an oracle deck and a tarot deck using Jasmine Becket-Griffith's work. So what I would love to talk about today is how you could do this for yourself. You don't have to consider yourself to be an artist or be creative to create a deck for your own personal practice. And I'm talking about just making something for you, not to sell, not to put out in the world. If that's something that comes from it, amazing, but we are just going to discuss this coming from a singular need and place. Of course, you certainly do not need to use a printing company to create your own deck, and you certainly don't need to spend much money to make it either. You could certainly buy a little deck of mini cards from the dollar store and stamp or handwrite on those cards as well. There are so many DIY options to make for a deck yourself that doesn't require doing something on the computer and sending it off to a printer. So I just wanted to put that up there like first and foremost. Like, I think DIY is super cool. And if that's the route that's best for you, then by all means, please do that and embrace yourself in that project. Once again, this doesn't require you to be a quote unquote creative person. I just really want to lay that out there for this video as well. So let's flip these over and we can get a bit of a glimpse of what I'm talking about, of what these will look like. So we have the tarot deck, the oracle deck, and a mini word deck. This is what I have been needing, wanting, dreaming, wishing, everything for. And then these two, I just had to make a deck for myself because I have always loved this artwork, but the current mass market decks available never really spoke to me in a full way because there was just some lacking of cohesion of the curation that always sort of didn't click with me. So being able to be my own curator and put the imagery with the cards I think fit best is a dream come true, of course. So we're gonna look through that as well. So what we're going to talk about are the simple steps that you could take or think about when wanting to create a deck for yourself and your practice. We'll keep it really simple. This won't be a 101 step-by-step how to use the computer and programs to do the deck creation, but we are going to talk art and design fundamentals and things to look out for and to do to improve upon your deck creating skills and perspective. Let's start by talking about this mini word deck first. So I have been desperately wanting a word deck like this, just a simple white background and black text. Of course, I had to throw a design on the background. I mean, the card back. You probably knew what I meant. But what was important for me was to have enough variety in words so that it will be neutral, but also have a bit of a mood. You know, I'm not totally fluffing stuff. You know, I want to have a bit of that edge to the deck. So I was super inspired by a deck that Tegan over at Animals and Arcana has, and I believe it's called the Here Now Oracle. I may be wrong about that, but I think I'm close. And I believe it's out of print, and I am always so freaking jealous of that deck. So I was definitely inspired by that deck. However, I did take my own spin on it, of course, and I really created this slightly moody, slightly spooky, slightly neutral deck of words. To me, it does feel like a random deck, but I feel like there is still a thin thread connecting all of them. So when you want to create a deck like this, let's just say you want to have a word deck of your own. What are things that you want to think about? Well, what's the theme? That's something I really struggled with this deck because I didn't really have a theme. I just knew I wanted words on a mini card. And while that's a great start, that's not going to put me in a direction of what words I should include and select. So what I ended up doing, I just started Googling a ton of word lists. That started giving me an idea of what sort of themes or categories I wanted to include in this deck. So I have some cards that are objects, descriptions, emotions, some seasons, a little bit of everything so that this deck would turn into something a bit more versatile, because consider the end user, which is yourself. Now, what is the purpose of this deck would be the second question. What's the theme? What's the purpose? Which are almost play into each other, right? You kind of need the purpose to have a theme. You kind of need a theme to have a purpose in a way, right? Especially for something like this. So think about your theme, think about your purpose, and then ask yourself what words, what type of words would live in that world, would live in that theme. And it doesn't have to be super deep and meaningful. If your theme was something like nature, well, you can include plants, animals, weather, seasons, landscape, right? So that then gives you all these mini buckets to then fill with these different words that fit in a bigger theme. It's in a way that we talk about artwork being cohesive. Well, this is just keywords being cohesive. And that doesn't mean repetition in the keywords and meaning. That just means they all fit together in the bigger puzzle. They're individual pieces, but they still fit together in the bigger picture. So that was something I really struggled with until I started to find my groove with a group of words. Then I was able to continue discovering other words that then kind of felt like they fit in that theme I was going for, which is a very loose and open theme, which was not helpful. Obviously, the more specific you can get, the easier or more natural the word selection or curation will go for you. Think of it as a sandbox. We are playing in the sandbox, and that sandbox is the theme, the vibe of the deck, the general gist of it, right? So you can't go out of those borders because then it would turn into something else. So think about that sandbox. So this is something that's great to do that you could totally do DIY, 100%. You could also go on a site like Make Playing Cards, and you can use their design program and type in the words for each card. So you don't even need like a fancy design program or anything, but you can use something free like Canva, which is great. Export your images and upload it to Make Playing Cards. However, that might be a poor example because I've heard Canva requires some extra steps to export your file for print quality. So maybe just ignore I said that. But that just point taken though, that there are free resources online in terms of a graphics program that you can then upload to a printer's website to print a deck. Another reason I wanted to do a very simple toned down black and white design to this, I wanted it to work across so many different decks. So think about what this deck's purpose, what this tool's purpose is for you and how that fits into your other tools. Once again, the sandbox. So I have quite a few decks that I have a struggle pairing with. And this deck is going to swoop right in and fit those missing links to my deck pairing woes, right? Like that's something that's very basic and like superficial that works for me. The other thing that I thought about that this deck would fill, I can make spreads from it. I could create a message from it. I could use this as a clarifier. I could use this as just a deck of words on its own that, sort of like those magnets on the fridge of the words and you make silly sentences. This really needed to live a lot of lives for me. And I kept the back design something that's still visually interesting, but simple, but embraces a bit of the keywords in here, right? This obviously isn't a must, but this is just from me as a designer. Having this bit of design on the back really plays into what your theme is of the deck. So you can sell the idea of what the theme of keywords is with the inclusion of the design of the card back, because it's going to enhance and uplift and embrace one another. You could totally just do a solid color back, and that's fine. So it doesn't have to be some overly designed thing, is also what I'm saying. We have a white background and black text, and then we have a pattern background and a single image on top. These are just 2 image pieces that exist in the public domain. And this is a typeface that's available online. So it's really a simple thing. And now let's think about why this looks pleasing to the eye. White space. Now, there's always a time and place for maximalism. More is more is more. That's certainly a lifestyle and a design style as well. However, white space gives you that breathing room. It gives you a place for your eye to rest, for your brain to rest. Because think about when something's so busy, your eyes jiggle around. They don't know where to land, and that kind of like hurts your brain and like thinking to digest and interpret what you are seeing. So each word has a nice padding, a nice buffer space around it, almost like when a picture has a matte frame, right? And then the actual frame, it gives space, it gives importance, it gives focus to the actual subject matter, which the subject matter here is our single keyword. So I had these words about double in size, and it was feeling and looking a bit cheap. Like it just felt a little tacky. And I was like, oh, I think these are too big. You also have to think about the different number of letters. Some words are going to be longer and shorter, so you also have to accommodate that in your design decision making. So I ended up bumping down the size of the text by like 2 times, and it sits so much more cleaner. It feels more professional. Like, it feels purposeful. When you're allowing and giving space to something, white space, it's called white space, and it's just so happened that this is a white background, but it's called white space regardless of the actual design or color of the background or the image or anything. White space is a key fundamental to design. It's what makes design design. So consider that in your artwork, in your illustrations, in your layout, in your creations. Are you giving each thing its own breathing room? Do they sit together nicely? You could see how the background design here, I left a bit more breathing room on the sides than I did on the top and bottom. Well, because we have a circular shape in a rectangle, so that's never going to be proportionate. But we can still visually give it breathing room where it's not too tight on the top and bottom, creating a tangent, which that would be where this black edge of the border would be super close to the edge of the cut card. That would be a tangent, because your eye's gonna latch onto that and grab that little error and being like, was that on purpose or was that an error? Because it just feels a little tight, right? So we wanna shrink it down a bit, give that little buffer room, and then whatever happens here on the sides, as long as it looks and feels like it's balanced nicely, then it's probably okay. So there's a little design tip and trick there. So I love the size as well. This is meant to be easy layering. Consider that as well. What are you going to use this in a spread, and how are you going to use this in a spread? Having this mini size allows for a lot more maneuverability throughout your spread and your reading, which I really love. I love working with a directional layers and in the spreads, and I like it to look clean and tidy, but like visually interesting in that patchwork style. So something in this size is great to get in on that layering, which I am definitely a sucker for. So you could see how this is something that can be approachable, can be attainable, even if you feel you are not an artist, or you're bad at the computer, or you're not creative, anything like that. If you can come up with an idea, and if you can figure out how to get that idea off the ground and into something, well, that's already a huge win. And then this physical product of that is the reward of your idea. I just love it. I mean, Making decks for myself is such an uplifting process. I mean, I get really kind of nutty when I'm doing it, but once it's here and it's done and I've created it and it's off my plate and now it's here physically and I can enjoy it, then of course I am loving the reward. I have another word deck, and it's something that I purchased years ago, and it's very brightly colored. You may have seen it in one of my videos before. Really fun typography and treatments to the text and the colors. However, I just can't put it with everything, and it's a certain vibe, right? Like, this is meeting a need in a different way. It's almost like I have like the bright and the dark like word decks now for me, which is perfect. It's exactly why I wanted to create something like this. And I just feel like making a deck for yourself, making a tool for yourself is such a different experience and engagement than when you buy a deck. You know, you put the idea out there, you crafted it, you were there start to finish. I mean, you know all the ins and outs. I don't know, it just brings another level of joy, really. So, no named title on this, but you know, I'll get there maybe. You can see the size. It's a mini, but because the design is so simple and straightforward and high contrast, it's very easy to read in the small size. That's another thing to think about, contrast. What's easiest to read? Something on a white background with black text, or a black background with white text. And then that plays into what font are you going to use as well. If you want something bolder and thicker so you could see it more clearly, then make sure to choose something like that. If you want something to have a tiny bit of personality, like this is a serif and it has a little bit of imperfections around the edges, giving it a tiny bit of a roughed up antique look, then that's another way you could fit in the theme of your deck, the typeface that you choose. You know, if you want something very like uplifting and fun, maybe use more of a chunkier type. If you want something that feels a bit more editorial, maybe use something that has really skinny, sharp lines to it. There's so many different ways you can play with the type to fit your visual theme and to really play out the theme of the words you chose. Okay, so what about creating a tarot deck from yourself? You're not an artist, you're not creative, you don't draw, you don't do the computer, whatever the reason, the excuse is. Okay, well, there's a huge resource online of the public domain and other resources that have images that are available for you to download and use as you wish. So if you love hunting and searching for stuff, if you love that gathering aspect, a project like this could be right up your alley. Curating a tarot deck is all about your vision, your theme, your purpose, your style, and importantly, what artwork is available to you to use. Now, when you're curating a deck of cards based on existing imagery, there are going to be images that just don't fit in. And what I mean by not fitting in is that they're a different style. And there might be a range of styles. So for this artwork, for example, there's certainly about 3, 4, 5 artwork styles. And I made sure to select ones that feel the most cohesive. So just turning on a critical eye and looking at the cards laid out next to each other, in a row, in their sections, in groups, you can get a better understanding of what's fitting and what's not. Because if you just make card by card and you go, perfect, Wheel of Fortune, done, don't open the file again, move on to the next, and you're not reviewing the cards over and over again as a whole, as individually, you're going to have some misses, some cards that feel like they don't fit in, because you have to take them all in together. So this is a practice of curation. This is a practice of your eye. Think about what makes something go together. For me in this deck, it was a certain style of the illustration, a certain style of the faces, or the theme or topic of the illustration. And then, can you push and pull the different styles into one whole? I used about 2, 3 different styles here of the artwork. But the way that I've curated and had them flow together, they feel purposeful when there's some distinct characteristics when it isn't the same as the next. You can see, for example, here, you can see we have a soft painterly treatment. The colors of the face, the eyes, the skin, the objects around the subject matter feel in a similar world, while clearly still different and from different series, because the hands sort of have a similar shape and look. The jaw, the chin, the eye, the eyelashes, the eyebrows, the blush, it looks very close. So you would say, oh, these are from separate series, but they still look like they could go together. These two actually look like they're from a very close series, so maybe not the best example. Okay, let's keep flipping. Okay, I'm like, where can we find two drastic styles? Now I feel like these two are a different style here. This one's a bit more sharp, feels ever so slightly cartoony, just because things are more fleshed out in the painting, a bit like crisper, clearer, little sharper. And this is definitely very moody. It feels a bit more looser. The face is a bit of a different shape. The eyes and the eyelashes are at a different scale. So while still having very similar features and why they could still go together for me, this is how you can blend and mix some different styles in. They can be different styles, but there still has to be some cohesion. Is it the scale? Is it the crop? Is it the way the eyes are treated? Is it the way the jaw and the face is? Do those kind of line up, but maybe some other elements feel very different? That's the sort of questions that I continuously ask myself as I'm curating a deck. Now, another thing that I absolutely love when curating decks, and just creating decks in general, but think of these as mini sets. Now, every page, every knight, every queen, and every king all feature artwork from these series. So every page is a different artwork from this series. Every knight is a different artwork, but from the same series. Same with the queens, same with the kings. But because I've set them up in these mini sets, your brain goes, yes, I'm recognizing a pattern. I know what to expect. These feel like they live together in a family, but they're still different. Those are all from different series, different styles as well, but they still looked really cohesive together, right? So I treated the aces in the same way. There's a series of these close-up shots. Perfect for the aces. So how can you pick apart the artwork when it's different to make it look good as a whole? It takes a lot of practice. It takes an eye. It takes experience. But it's something that's 100% achievable. Give yourself time. I do this for a living. So putting together a group of images is something that I can bang out really quickly. But enjoy the process. Have this be a project. Have this be a part of your practice. How can you fit creating a deck into your practice? I think that is an interesting task. Think about the suits as a whole. What do the cups look like? Are we going through a world in the suit? Does it make sense going card to card to card? It doesn't feel jarring. We are seeing different compositions, so it's not feeling repetitive either. And at the end of the day, you do have to succumb to what's available to you as well. So sometimes you're going to have to make choices with your curating of, dang, I really want this image for this card, or I really want this type of subject for this, whatever the thing is, or, oh man, I found 3 images in a series, but I really need 4. That happened to me in this. How can I find one to replace it with? So that's why the continuous going back and forth, looking at the cards singularly, looking them as a whole, looking at them as a mini set, really helps alleviate some of those challenges of making something look and feel cohesive. And then once again, how can you tell the story of the tarot through one image that is pre-existing? I think that's a fun challenge on itself. You can think about the emotion that the image is giving, the mood that the image is giving. Do any of the symbolism or pieces in the photo, in the illustration, in the artwork represent or really evoke something in concept that represents that tarot card. You know, some of these you could switch around, and some of these I have swapped around many of times, but when you land back on what's the most recognizable thing about that tarot card, and if I saw that image, would I think of that tarot card? Because sometimes we want to use an image that feels and screams like one card, but we really want to use it for another card. So then that's when you have to kind of step back and ask yourself, well, what is the purpose of this deck? Is it just I'm going to use it for me as a general reader? Then maybe you do want the artwork to feel more mainstream or like obviously hitting, you know, in terms of Rider-Waite-Smith. Is there, you know, a boat in the Six of Swords, which I did swap to an image with a boat because I tried it in another card, but it just kept screaming Six of Swords at me. So those are some choices that you have to make. And then once again, do you want to represent sort of the traditional means, or do you want to take it in a totally different direction? Is this experimental? So many questions to ask yourself, but when you're curating a large group of imagery to look cohesive together, you need way more images than you need. So you need 78 pieces of artwork for a tarot deck. You'll probably want around 400 images to pick from to really give yourself the best solutions. And that's after looking through every single thing available, downloading, saving the ones that speak to you or feel right. Always do more than you think. And then going through those imageries and selecting and curating that down further and further and further. So I'll go ahead and put in a screenshot of the process that I do when I curate a deck, and it's a digital representation of just laying out all the cards in order. And as I finish a card, I put it in there so then I can look at them as a whole, as a mini set, and as individuals, like I keep saying. So yeah, this was a really fun process. This is a really fun project. I think anyone should do something like this. There are photography websites. If you are more a photography-based person, there are resources that are commercial-free, royalty-free, public domain that you can download and use. It doesn't have to be an artistic thing. It can literally be stock photography. It could be antique paintings. It could be artwork that's available in the public domain. It can be whatever. What about old book pages? I mean, whatever you could come up with and that works for you, do it. Like if there's enough of a resource available, if there's enough materials available for you to put together something big, remember, you always need so much more than you actually are going to use to have the choices to refine the curation, to refine the collection of images, to make them look like they live together. That's the whole point of this. That's what makes curated decks successful. They have to have that eye of cohesion of the curation. It's what makes it or breaks it. So this, I am so excited to use. I think something like this, if you've got the gumption, if you got the will, if you got the gall to put together 78 images and make a deck for yourself, I say absolutely do it. Now, this was the queen that I had to find because there wasn't a fourth queen in the series. So I had to do a little pivot. All right. And the last thing I will mention, talking about design choices, we need a place for the title. I mean, you don't have to have a title on there, I guess, but let's just treat it as you want to have a title. So I decided on a black bar on the bottom, black because it goes with every piece of imagery. I didn't want to be fussy and have them switch and do different things because I wanted the focus to be clearly on the gorgeous artwork. I wanted this to be a secondary thing. So once again, remember how we had the white background with the black text for high contrast and clear readability? We have the black background with the white text for that high contrast and clear readability. And we're bringing in a bit of personality with that text again. It's a different one that the word one has, but they're in the same family. This one just has a bit more of like flourish and design kind of flair to it. So next we are going to look at the oracle deck, but I knew I was going to make an oracle deck while I was making the tarot deck. I wanted them to live together. Just bring this in really quick and let's just do that. So I knew these two decks were going to live together. There was so much imagery that I didn't use in the tarot, but I still really wanted to include in a deck. So of course I went with an oracle. So knowing that I was going to an oracle and a tarot, I wanted them to look good together, but also live on their own. I wanted the designs to tie in, but not be the exact same. So I did the big black border on the oracle to accommodate a title and 3 keywords, and also because a lot of the animal and plant imagery was in a more rectangular square-like dimension, where the tarot required something a bit more longer and skinnier. So I knew a full frame was going to work really well in the oracle to accommodate all those elements: the title, the keywords, and the size and crop I wanted the images to sit. I didn't want a lot of distractions like that on the tarot because there's less information required on that. You don't have to put 3 keywords on the oracle, but I like that, especially for the way I chose to title this, which we'll get into next. So you can see how these look really good together, but once again, they are different, but they live in a family. So I had to think in this design, what's going to sit nicely with one another. So we did the matching black because once again, black was a neutral color to really enhance and accompany the artwork. It's not taking away, it's only adding a really nice contrast to it, really. So consider in your tarot and your deck that you're making, what is the design? Because it's basically a stamp. It's basically a template. Whatever I do on this fool for the border, for the title, for the whatever, that has to go through the next 77 cards. And it has to go in the exact same way. Now, you could choose to place it in different ways if you wanted to. I'm a bit more rigid in mine. I like them to be very templated because I want my eye to always know exactly where it's landing. I know it's always going to be center at the bottom. So my brain isn't jumping. My brain isn't trying to grab and process a new spot the information is in. It's like when you're reading a book, the lines of the text all line up through every single page, okay? Because your brain just needs to read them in that way. And that's just like this for a single piece of paper, a single image, a single printout. Our brains want order in design. When I approached the oracle deck, like I had mentioned before, I knew I had a huge treasure trove of nature and animal images. And because I had to decide on what was my theme for the tarot deck. The tarot deck theme, I went with something just a bit more darker, a bit more moodier. And the oracle deck, while still moody, has those pop vibrant bits of nature, of animals. And like I said, while there are the poisonous plants in there and some other toxic animals, that mix and match of sweet and sour, hard and soft is accompanied in this deck. So I played with every image that had a plant, that had an animal, that felt anywhere near nature-based, and once again, fit into the curation that I was trying to go for. So some of the things I looked for when selecting images for the oracle deck was once again, the style of the artwork. We have 2 or 3 styles of the paintings in here. We have some very zoomed in close crop images like this, and that carries out through most of the deck. And then we have some more pulled out images as well, showing maybe more full body or more of a portrait style like this. But then I decided that as well, we crop the top of the head off, so we're bringing in even more cohesion to loop in these closer zoomed in images here. We also needed to include, and when I say we, I mean me, needed to include a way of representing the title for the artwork. I knew I didn't want something that was more conceptual. I wanted something for the titles that was literal. So I actually went to the artist's website and looked up each selected illustration that I chose for this deck. And I picked a word or a phrase from what the actual artwork title is called, or something that was in the description. There is a lovely information-rich description for every print available, and I pulled from there as well to get an idea and an accurate representation of what this artwork is. I wouldn't have necessarily known firefly because I'm just kind of a ding-dong sometimes, and I'm thinking night, right? But no, I looked it up and it was fire. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's even better. So even doing research into the images you're selecting, and it doesn't have to be something that's deep and meaningful. It really can just be, what's the actual title of this painting? Or is there any brief sentences about this artwork that may give me an idea or a concept to jump off from? I use that to my advantage all the time. So once again, I selected series that featured the plants, the animals, nature, anything that fit those requirements, I did. And then I also made sure of what is going to be the focus. Now, the focus of this series of artwork is the fish and not necessarily the figure. So I wanted the fish to be more of the focus and not the figure, which is why I didn't zoom in on this one more. Like, maybe like, well, why didn't you crop the top of her head since you did that on some of the others? Well, because she is not the focus of goldfish. It's these. Now, if I were to zoom in, I would begin to lose some of that fish, and I didn't want that. So I had to set a bit of a rule for myself. Some figures' head is slightly below the border, some go past, right? But because I'm creating a series, I can have those buckets of categories, of styles, and as long as they still feel cohesive, then it's totally fine. The problem is when the styles start to jump too far, or the way the execution is done starts to go too far from one another. But these all sort of live in a same world. You could clearly see that these two are from different series, but once again, there are similarities. So we have the theme, which is nature. Obviously, we have this green, green, green animals and plants. Here we have the dragons. So we're still getting the animal side of nature. This is a close-up shot, but we have many of those close-up shots, and we have shots that are also pulled back where the head isn't cut off and it's more of a fuller upper body. Perfect. They're both centered, focused. They're both symmetrical compositions, so that's also making them feel like they fit together. Once again, the face shape, the eyes, the hair, all have a softness. It's not cartoony. There's nothing overly sharp in the style, so they feel like they play nicely. This is one that, I kind of toyed with not including or including, but I just felt like it was a really strong image that I really wanted to include it, and I didn't have anything else like it in there. So I'd say that might be one that is probably not symmetrical, and it might be the only one, but it still works and fits in for me. So see, that's where you can start to push and pull your choices and your collection, right? Like, this curation is all about the give and take. Nothing's going to be super rigid, like this. It has to have this, it has to have, no. It's fluid, but you have to have that sandbox. You have to have those boundaries to make it make sense. So I made sure there wasn't too much duplication of the subject matter. Oh, okay, no, see, I have more asymmetrical. So I do have other asymmetrical compositions. So we have the figure over here and the animal over here, making it an asymmetrical composition because we're going a bit more this way. Now I did center them in the frame, but overall you can see how the theme that I selected of nature really plays out across the images, even though this feels more portrait-like and less landscape in situation, they still feel like they're in the family. And that's the important part. They're in the family. Your eye isn't going, oh, that one jumps out and doesn't make sense to me. No, this goes, yep, I can imagine these together, definitely. See, here's one that's full body. It's not head cropped. So there's the balance. It has a bit more of those neon colors, which I have through some of these. Balance the colors, balance the subject matter, balance the composition, balance the scale. I mean, it's all about balance and that eye. They have to look good together. And I will also insert the way that I lay these out digitally to check that myself. When I make a new card, I put it in my page and I see how it fits in the puzzle. Some of these I did extend the imagery as well because I wanted a better composition. So make the image work for you. Think about zooming in or zooming out, and if that changes the way the imagery reads for you. Can you adjust the colors? Something more in high contrast is going to feel a bit more intense. That's something that's a bit more like hazy and muted and desaturated. All of these ways that art can play with our perception and our brain and the way we process and digest information is a really fascinating subject, and part of the reason why I just absolutely love talking about artwork. Because what I have to say and what I see is totally can be different from you, and I think that's pretty cool. So you'll have to let me know what you think of this one. I certainly love it. It meets all of my needs, and I'm really excited to use it. One more design aspect that I think is important to talk about that we touched upon in the small word deck, the back designs. So I landed on this tarot back design rather quickly. This image is a very long, skinny, horizontal image here. This was basically the image. And I really liked it. It fit into a few images that I used in the deck from this series. But obviously I can't use a horizontal image. And then if I think about zooming in on this image, I'd only get her eyes and nose and lips, really. And so then we're losing that visual data, that visual information for our brains to go, oh no, actually it's a winged eye, blah, 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 blah. So I thought, what if this is mirrored? And I threw it on the card back file and I was like, oh, this is the one. Like, this is cool. Now, the Oracle deck, I had a totally different back, and it's a back that I made before I made this tarot one. I love the image for the card back I had, but I didn't have anything similar for the tarot back. And knowing that I wanted these to be like a mini series, a little family that lives together, I wanted them to have that cohesion, like the front designs with the black borders or the black bar. I want the backs to also feel like they're purposeful in their design. So I sat on it and I sat on it and I sat on it, and this image, once again, too tall and too narrow to use as a card, but I still think it was super cool. And I thought, oh man, what if I mirror this as well for the Oracle? It fits with the nature and sort of critter creature theme. It definitely would go with the tarot back design. So I thought, okay, let's just try it. And I loved it. And look how cool they look together, even though they're different. And they're a little bit conjoined twins vibes, but that's okay. That this one is going kind of horizontally vertical and this is going vertical. But they don't have to be samesies, and that's what makes them look really great together. But you could still tell it's from the same series, it's from the same creator, it's from the same two set of decks, they're meant to go together. So you can think about all these little ways to tie in this mini set, these mini connections, these little Easter eggs of these really thoughtful choices that you make. Because when people pick up on that pattern and people pick up on, oh, they kind of go together, they're both mirrored, they think that's clever because it is clever. So think about those little simple choices of just taking an image and flipping it on its other side together. What does that create? What does that do? You could certainly even do that for card design. You want to take a photo, you want to take a shot of a beach, and you want to do some interesting mirroring, cropping, editing. Oh, by all means, do it, But we're just talking simple. We have a group of images and we can make decks from that. So I won't get to the next step of design, but just wanted to make sure to mention all those sort of things as well. I think that's what I have for you today. I really tried to keep these concepts and points really clear and easy to understand, and how we can see how that same simple tactic can be played across the few different things that I discuss. Definitely don't want to overload with any sort of information or lingo. So do let me know if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed these sort of art discussions. From my previous video, it certainly seems like many of you do enjoy this. I do love talking about artwork in this way. I used to lead a meeting every Friday at one of my old jobs that we would discuss images. It was a fun way to make a mini mood board and around a theme or a topic or an idea and talk about why we pick something or why we like things the way we do. So I do really enjoy just discussing art, talking about design fundamentals, talking about how to improve design, all of those things. It's certainly something I deeply enjoy and I find very pleasurable. And I really hope that I can share some of that knowledge with you and that it helps in your potential creations, even in the way that you work with or view decks and the artwork on the cards. I think having a bit of a understanding of art, of design, of some of those potential choices and why or why not that may or may not work for you really helps you look at a deck in a different lens. You can kind of see and maybe better understand why it's not working for you in a way that's beyond, I just don't like it. Because there's a reason why you don't like it. And I think sometimes in a lot of different ways in life and areas of life, we just don't have the words or the lingo or the way to communicate what we're physically or emotionally feeling. So I hope that these videos can better educate everyone. I want to spread the knowledge and spread the learning through decks because I think looking at artwork through the tarot lens, through the oracle lens is definitely a really special way to look at the artwork. It does place you more in a sense of fine art. I love thinking about a tarot deck and an oracle deck that these are paintings up on a gallery wall or up on a museum, and you stop by one and you stand there and you look at them and you think about it. You read the little title plaque, you look at the painting, you look at the sculpture, and does it say anything to you? Because it might not, it might not be your style, or you might be obsessed with it, or you might be like me and you cry because you just feel so moved at what you're seeing. And also thinking about the accomplishment of having a piece of artwork or some creation getting that sort of acknowledgement. And I feel like creating your own decks gives you that recognition, that reward of your hard work to have this final product in your hand to then be able to use and share. I mean, I really don't think it gets any better than that. But maybe that's a discussion for another time. Thanks for being here with me. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And until next time, I'll chat with you then. Bye.